We're talking about that the role of autoimmune disease can cause a direct damage to the brain. Physical trauma to the brain can cause brain damage. And then number 3 is emotional trauma definitely reshapes and can cause damage to your brain. And all of these brain injuries absolutely has a giant role in making any other health condition way worse. Way worse. So it really makes you rethink how many brain and nerve symptoms that we think are idiopathic or no reason, or it's just depression, or it's just brain fog, is really because your brain's under autoimmune attack. We're talking today about brain injury and how to recover from it. I'm Maggie Yu, MD. I am a functional and holistic medicine physician and owner of Transform. In our programs, we have our main program, which is Transform Autoimmune, which is our 5 pillars program, which is a root cause functional approach to autoimmunity. Little do you know that this exact same approach is incredible for brain injury as well. We've used this with same program for children with autism and spectrum disorder and ADHD as well. So this isn't just an autoimmune program we're talking about. The approach actually is a root cause functional medicine approach to many complicated and chronic diseases. So that's why we're talking about brain injury today, because I do think that a lot of people tend to partition themselves into certain groups or diagnoses where they don't think that they could be helped with a root cause comprehensive functional approach. So that's why I wanted to dive in more and just talk. Let's get real about what is brain injury. What are some of the causes of brain injury? What are some issues you guys are struggling with it? And what is a root cause approach to turning it around? And how does it even tie in with autoimmunity for those of you that do have autoimmunity? Dawn said that she was feeling fine with her health until she had a brain aneurysm and a minor stroke. And then later learned that there was definitely an autoimmune component to this and is dealing with symptoms of joint pain, exhaustion, depression, like she never did before. Common scenario we hear here in brain injury and autoimmunity. Wendy says, she was doing well until a life-threatening illness affected one of her children. So there's definitely was a role in emotional trauma to her brain that triggered disease, right? Katie says that brain fog is a real thing. Hell yeah, brain fog is a real thing. It's a medical issue. And the question really is this brain fog reversible, or is it some sign of permanent damage? That's one of the questions, and I'd love to answer that a little bit later. Guinea says that, that she felt like a giant fall that she had that broke her shoulder and injured her neck definitely contribute to some of the damage she's feeling like from a brain standpoint. I totally get that. Physical trauma, right? And then Valerie says emotional trauma. There was suicide in the family, and I absolutely get that. That's an issue that we dealt with in our family as well. And that has a ginormous impact in the family as far as I call it affecting neuroplasticity in our brain. Our brains are constantly actually changing from what's going on in our environment. So that's a huge emotional trauma, right? Thank you for sharing that, Valerie. And then Wendy said that she had multiple car accidents. And that's me. That's a category I'm in as well. I had 3 car accidents in an 18-month period. That was the start of my brain injury, actually, along with autoimmunity complicating it later. So yes, car accidents. And then Tara said, she was in an abusive relationship, and definitely physical abuse, physical violence and trauma can actually definitely cause brain damage, right? Brittany said that her dad's death was a major reshaper and damage to her brain, she felt like. And dealing with his sudden passing was really a trigger of brain injury to her and ultimately other autoimmune issues, right? So is this sounding familiar to any of you? If you're feeling like, yeah, I definitely am dealing with some brain injury, type in the comment section below and tell me about how you feel like brain injury was actually the start or the trigger or the exacerbator, worsening factor in your overall health. Sarah says, people dealing with medical issues for over 12 years. Vanessa says that she's been dealing with idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Again, another form that causes mental brain symptoms, actually pressure on your brain. So that's a medical diagnosis that causes some of the physical damage to the brain. So when I think about brain injury and damage to actual brain issue, a couple things, which is that there's definitely the role of physical trauma, right? Whether it's an MVA, motor vehicle accident, aneurysm to the brain, stroke, physically being hit, struck, falls, those can definitely trigger damage to your brain. All right, that's real. And then another cause would be definitely emotional trauma. I think that there's a big role in severely traumatic emotional events in our lives that really changes our brain. So there's this whole concept around neuroplasticity, and we used to think that our brain is some set neural pathways, and that it's like a computer input box that you put in the data and processing and it happens. But what we now know is that with neuroplasticity is that the role of the brain, the actual shape and what's happening inside the cells and nerves are constantly changing and shaped by the experiences in our life. So does emotional trauma absolutely affect neuroplasticity and change your brain and the pathways? Absolutely. And can emotional trauma trigger the worsening or onset of other diseases like autoimmune disease, chronic pain syndromes, depression, anxiety, other things? Absolutely. So emotional trauma is definitely the secondary cause I'm seeing here that many of you are talking about. Thirdly, it's autoimmune disease, which is not everyone has autoimmune disease, but the people that do have autoimmune disease, is it a major trigger of brain injury? And the answer is yes. And in autoimmune disease, we're not just talking about dealing with MS or myasthenia that are clearly brain related, right? But the thing is, what we find is that many autoimmune diseases have many other targets of autoimmune attacks. So I don't care if you have celiac. A lot of people think celiac is a gut or GI only autoimmune disease, and wrong. They now know that there's hundreds of other targets, and frequently in celiac disease, and people with gluten sensitivity, the target is actually nerves and brain. So it's interesting when we actually look at celiac disease now. I think that because it was first discovered in the gut, we call it a gut autoimmune disease. But really, now we're finding it's more of a neurological autoimmune disease, and the gut is just another target. So it really makes you rethink how many brain and nerve symptoms that we think are idiopathic or no reason, or it's just depression, or it's just brain fog, is really because your brain's under autoimmune attack. Is that bringing an aha to anyone? Does this resonate with you? Does this make sense to you? Okay, so just to summarize really quickly, we're talking about that the role of autoimmune disease can cause direct damage to the brain. Physical trauma to the brain can cause brain damage. And then number 3 is emotional trauma definitely reshapes and can cause damage to your brain. And all of these brain injuries absolutely has a giant role in making any other health condition way worse, way worse. Okay, so there's actually brain gut connection, there's brain heart connection, there's brain and regional pain areas that are connected. Our brain is intimately connected with every part of our body. And interestingly, our little brain that's sitting here in the dark actually has an actual physical map of your entire body in there. So it's amazing what our brains can do, but it's also amazing how connected every part of us is to our brain.